Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Layak Siddiqui, the father of all of us. Part 60. Why Phi pattern science now requires a constitution, threshold part. We began with pattern itself. What can be compared, what stays the same through change. The fourfold identity gave us the bones. A pattern is itself across transformations, and we can prove it publicly. We learned to measure without smuggling time, to remember without storing the past, to model without confusing map and territory. Part 51 built the firewall between layers. Part 51.5 protected the past from future rewriting. Part 52 reframed error as diagnostic signal. Part 53 taught us to correct while preserving lineage. Part 53.5 gave us a taxonomy of failure. Part 54 taught us that uncertainty is the shape of finite access. Part 54.3 distinguished kinds of not knowing. Part 54.5 showed us that instruments drift and must be calibrated. Part 55 taught us that claims must be replayable. Part 56 taught us that paths must be auditable. Part 57 taught us that claims must be falsifiable. Part 58 taught us that disagreement is diagnostic. Part 59 taught us that knowledge must survive its creators. Now we face the final threshold, scale. The moment everything changes. Imagine a small village. Everyone knows everyone. Trust is personal. If someone says they saw something, others can ask around, check with neighbors, rely on shared history. Now imagine a vast city of millions. You cannot know everyone. You cannot check personally. Trust must become something else. Not personal familiarity, but systems, rules, institutions, laws. This is the problem of scale. What works in a small group breaks down in a large one. Informal trust does not scale. We have been building Phi pattern science piece by piece, layer by layer, protection by protection. We started with foundations, identity, measurement, modeling. We added protections, anti-smuggling, handoffs, non-retroactivity. We added disciplines, error, correction, failure taxonomy. We added honesty, uncertainty, calibration, replayability, auditability, falsifiability. We added social tools, disagreement, continuity. We have built a science that can be public, checkable, correctable, and preservable. But now we face a new challenge. This science is no longer small. It is multi-observer, multi-generational, multi-institutional. It spans laboratories, countries, decades. It involves thousands of people who do not know each other, who have never met, who work with different tools, different assumptions, different pressures. At this scale, informal trust no longer suffices. Hidden assumptions creep in. Authority substitutes for evidence. Selective reporting distorts the record. Smuggling goes undetected. Irreproducible claims accumulate. Archives decay. Institutions protect themselves rather than truth. Claim types get confused. Provenance gets lost. These are not signs of failure, they are signs of scale. And they require a new kind of response. They require a constitution. What a constitution is and what it is not. The word constitution can sound intimidating. It sounds like government, like law, like bureaucracy, like restriction. But in Phi pattern science, a constitution is something else. A constitution is a protective shell around the fragile act of public certification. It does not create patterns. Patterns exist whether we certify them or not. It does not create science. Science is the discovery and description of patterns. The Constitution merely protects the conditions under which public claims about patterns can be made, checked, and trusted at scale. Think of it like the rules of a road. The road does not create the destinations. The destinations exist whether we have roads or not. But without rules, lanes, signals, signs, the road becomes chaos. Accidents happen. Travel becomes impossible. The Constitution is the rule of the road for public pattern science. It does not tell you where to go. It does not tell you what to discover. It only ensures that the journey can be made safely, that claims can be checked, that paths can be retraced, that the system does not collapse under its own complexity. A constitution is not external bureaucracy. It is not an enemy of science. It is the condition of science at scale. The difference between a campfire and a city. A campfire gathering does not need a municipal water system, a sewage grid, zoning law, breach inspection, public health protocols, or building codes. A few people can drink from the stream, burn wood, and arrange themselves by informal understanding. A city cannot live that way. The very scale of the city creates new vulnerabilities. Fire spreads, waste accumulates, disease propagates, bridges carry strangers, water systems cross neighborhoods, private habits affect public survival. So cities require infrastructure and law, not because cities are worse than campfires, but because scale creates fragility that goodwill alone cannot manage. Five pattern science has reached the city stage. When it was only a small, local, or personal practice, informal trust could carry more of the weight. But once it becomes a public, multi generational, institutionally transmissible science, the campfire model fails. The Constitution is the civic infrastructure of public pattern truth tracking. Why informal trust stops scaling? Informal trust works in small groups because many things remain locally shared. Language, standards, memory, reputation, context, common training, direct observation of each other's work, and rapid correction. But at larger scale, those shared conditions weaken or break. A person reading a paper 50 years later does not share the original room. A lab across the world does not inherit the same tacit habits. A future generation does not automatically know what a term meant in its earlier framework. A public institution cannot simply assume everyone means the same thing by evidence, signal, or success. As scale grows, several things happen naturally. Hidden assumptions multiply. Local context becomes invisible. Incentives distort reporting. Institutional prestige hardens. Archives decay. Tools drift. Language changes. Private interpretation starts masquerading as public structure. This is not because people become evil. It is because large systems generate opacity by default. Informal trust does not fail because trust is bad. It fails because trust alone cannot carry the load of scale. At that point, verifiable process must take over from assumed shared background. That is exactly what a constitution is for. The threat model at scale. Now we need to say exactly what threatens five pattern science once it scales. The constitution is justified by a concrete threat model. Hidden assumptions. At small scale, a colleague might say, "Wait, why are you assuming that?" At large scale, assumptions can become institutional climate. They stop appearing as assumptions at all. Authority substitution. A famous lab says it, so people assume it is solid. A prestigious institution endorses it, so scrutiny weakens. Authority begins to substitute for evidence. Selective reporting. Success is exciting, failures embarrass. So fields begin publishing only what worked. Negative results disappear. Future generations inherit a polished surface instead of the true landscape. Smuggling. At scale, smuggling becomes more dangerous because its pathways multiply. Meanings slip into structure. Interpretive defaults slip into measurement claims. Irreproducibility. A result may look strong but depend on hidden code, unstable toolchains, undocumented selections. When the original team forgets, the claim remains influential but methodologically weak. Archive loss. Storage media fail. Formats become obsolete. Metadata is neglected. Failure records vanish. A science without memory of its paths becomes dependent on legend. Institutional capture. Large systems tend to protect themselves. A laboratory optimizes for publication count over replay quality. Governance begins protecting itself more than the science. Type confusion. Structural claims, predictive claims, causal claims, interpretive claims. At scale, they get confused. Whole fields drift without noticing they are no longer speaking in type-disciplined ways. Provenance loss. Where did the claim come from? What does it depend on? At scale, lineage is forgotten. Claims become unmoored from their path history. Each threat is real. Each becomes more dangerous as scale increases. The village and the city. Think again of the village and the city. In the village, there are no traffic laws. Everyone knows everyone. You drive slowly, you wave, you avoid each other. It works for a village. In the city, traffic laws are essential. Without them, there would be chaos, accidents, gridlock. The laws do not tell you where to go. They do not choose your destination. They only make it possible for millions to move without constant collision. The constitution of fee pattern science is like traffic laws for knowledge. It does not tell scientists what to discover. It does not choose which patterns matter. It only makes it possible for thousands of scientists across generations to work without constant collision, without corruption, without loss. The village had no need for such laws. The city cannot function without them. We have built a city of knowledge. Now we need its laws. What the Constitution protects. The Constitution protects the conditions of public truth tracking at scale. Specifically, it protects comparability, that patterns can be lawfully compared across observers, across instruments, across time. Invariance, that what we claim as pattern remains itself under declared transformations. Window honesty, that the conditions of access are declared, not hidden. Uncertainty declaration, that claims include what they do not know, not just what they do. Replayability, that paths can be retraced by others. Auditability, that paths can be inspected for hidden shaping. Refusal visibility, that failed claims are documented, not erased. Archival continuity, that knowledge survives its creators. Anti-smuggling discipline, that hidden assumptions are declared, not smuggled. Type discipline, that different kinds of claims are treated differently. Provenance tracking, that lineage is preserved, not forgotten. These are not arbitrary rules. They are the conditions of public truth tracking at scale. They are what make it possible for thousands of strangers across generations to build shared knowledge. 8. The Constitution does not create phi patterns. This point is essential. It must be repeated until it is understood. The Constitution does not create phi patterns. Patterns exist in reality. They are there whether we certify them or not. The Constitution does not invent them, does not define them, does not determine them. The Constitution only protects the lawful public claims about patterns. Think of it like this. The law does not create the fact that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. That fact exists independently, but the law can protect the conditions under which that fact is measured, reported, and shared. It can ensure that thermometers are calibrated, that methods are documented, that claims are checkable. The science comes first. The Constitution serves it. This distinction matters because it prevents the Constitution from becoming a source of truth in itself. The Constitution is not truth, it is the protector of truth tracking. Confusing the two would be catastrophic. Another analogy, the seed and the shell. Think of a seed. The seed contains the life potential. The shell does not create the life. But without the shell, that fragile life may not survive transport, pressure, dryness, impact, or decay. The Constitution is like that shell. Five pattern science is the living core. The Constitution protects it as it moves through institutions, generations, archives, disagreements, power structures, and public use. A protective shell is not external decoration. It is part of what lets fragile life survive scale and exposure. That is the sense in which the Constitution is necessary. Constitution as engineering, not moralism. Constitutional necessity is not a moral sermon. It is not saying people are bad, so we need rules. It is saying something more structural. Once a science becomes large, distributed, and generational, natural system drift produces vulnerabilities that must be engineered against. That is engineering, not moralism. Bridges need load rules not because steel is sinful, but because gravity exists. Water systems need pressure regulation not because pipes are immoral, but because flow behaves lawfully. Air traffic needs procedures not because pilots are evil, but because scale and speed create coordination risks. Likewise, public pattern science needs constitutional protection not because scientists are uniquely corrupt, but because scale creates natural pathways of distortion. That is the proper spirit of this chapter. What happens without constitutional protection? Without constitutional protection, the science may still continue in name, but several pathologies become likely. Reputation replaces replay, institutional authority replaces audit. Current theory rewrites past claims. Archives preserve results but not paths. Failures disappear. Calibration drift becomes invisible. Interpretive layers leak into structure. Claim types blur. Disagreements are settled politically rather than diagnostically. Future generations inherit simplified slogans instead of living pathways. At first, the science may still look impressive. Papers still appear, institutions still function, metrics still rise. But the inner truth tracking quality decays. This is what makes the Constitution necessary before full corruption, not only after scandal. Good engineering protects against expected drift before collapse. Another analogy, the ship and the sea. A ship does not wait to install hull discipline until the sea has already entered the cabin. A city does not wait to invent sanitation after contamination has spread. A scientific civilization should not wait for trust collapse before building constitutional protection. Preventive structure matters precisely because natural decay is gradual. By the time archives have decayed, lineages broken, replay pathways vanished, institutions captured, and false certainty normalized, repair becomes much harder. This is why we act at the threshold, not because crisis is here, but because it is predictable. The constitutional necessity principle. Let us state the principle clearly. The Constitution is needed because five-pattern science has become serious, public, and vulnerable. Informal trust no longer suffices. Structural protection is required. In simpler form, at scale, trust must be replaced by verifiable process. Or even shorter, scale demands law. This principle is not about imposing control. It is about enabling coordination. It is about making it possible for thousands of strangers across generations to build knowledge together without the system corrupting itself. The science comes first. This chapter must also block a dangerous inversion. Once constitutions exist, people often begin treating the law as the source of the thing it governs. The bureaucracy starts behaving as if it creates the science. The forms begin feeling more real than the patterns they were meant to protect. Five-pattern science must reject that inversion. The Constitution is not the science. The Constitution does not outrank the science. The Constitution cannot redefine finite primitives by convenience. The Constitution cannot replace comparability with procedure. The law protects lawful public claims about pattern reality. It does not become the source of pattern reality. Essence first, Constitution second. Companion implementation after that. The threshold we have crossed. We have reached a threshold in this journey. Everything before Part 60 was foundational, building the concepts, the protections, the disciplines. We learned what patterns are, how to measure them, how to model them, how to interpret them. We learned how to protect against smuggling, against retroactivity, against error. We learned how to correct, how to classify failure, how to declare uncertainty. We learned how to calibrate, how to replay, how to audit. We learn how to make claims falsifiable, how to handle disagreement, how to preserve knowledge across generations. All of this was preparation. Now we stand at the threshold. We have built a science that can be public, checkable, correctable, preservable. But we have also built a science that is now large enough, complex enough, and long-lasting enough to require explicit governance. Informal trust no longer works. We need a constitution. This is not a failure of the project. It is a sign of its maturity. Small things can be managed informally. Large things require structure. We have built something large. Now we must build a structure that protects it. The constitutional transition. What follows Part 60 is a transition. We move from foundation to constitution, from essence to law, from discovery to governance. Parts 61 through 73 will install the constitutional layer itself. They will define the gates that claims must pass, the rules for lawful certification, the procedures for refusal and appeal, the mechanisms for amendment, the institutions that maintain the Constitution, the relationship between constitutional law and scientific practice. This is not the end of inquiry. It is the beginning of inquiry at scale. It is the creation of a framework within which thousands of scientists across generations can work together without the system corrupting itself. A constitution does not stop science. It enables science to continue indefinitely. Closing meditation. We have come a long way together. We started with the simplest question: what is a pattern? How do we know when two things are the same? From that seed, we built an entire framework, layer by layer, protection by protection, discipline by discipline. We learned to measure without smuggling. We learned to model without confusing map and territory. We learned to correct without rewriting history. We learned to declare uncertainty, to calibrate instruments, to replay paths, to audit processes, to make claims falsifiable, to handle disagreement, to preserve knowledge across generations. We built a science that can be public, checkable, correctable, preservable. Now we face the final task. This science is no longer small. It is large enough to require governance. It is old enough to require memory. It is complex enough to require law. We need a constitution, not to control science, to protect it, not to restrict inquiry, to enable it at scale, not to replace judgment, to create the conditions under which judgment can be exercised without fear of corruption. The Constitution is a protective shell around the fragile act of public certification. It does not create patterns, it protects the conditions under which we can discover them. We have built the house. Now we must build the laws that keep it standing. This is the threshold. Beyond it lies the Constitution. Let us cross it together. Always, peace be upon you.